King Charles' newest portrait was unveiled and, well, it is different, no doubt about it. But this is a very good opportunity to learn how art can be objectively bad and a couple things about manipulation and gaslighting. I'm going to make myself absolutely clear right from the start. This is heinous. This doesn't work either as a portrait or an objectively good work of art. It reminds me too much of that Viggo the Carpathian painting from Ghostbusters 2. And I'm going to address the art is subjective mob, but there are a couple things we need to talk about first. Such as the Red Bath painting is being touted as the first portrait of the King of England, when in fact this one was the first official portrait. I already talked about this one, and you know that I found it rather unflattering and boring. That's one of the arguments of the people who defend this monstrosity, that at least it's not boring, or not the usual monarchy portrait. I cannot help but remind you what happened the last time someone came to add more variety to the boring monarchy. But anyway, one thing that the Red Bath painting is superior to its predecessor is the facial expression. It is not hard to answer the question, which one of these two has a more kingly expression? And the left one is rather weak, not very appropriate to represent a monarch. And the one on the right has, thanks to lighting and facial features, a good combination of intensity and thoughtfulness. I would go as far as to say that if the portrait has been only the area around the face, such as this one, it would have been okay. Maybe we would have needed still more separation between figure, in this case Charles, and the ground. And that is the first reason this portrait is heinous. The lack of contrast between the figure, or the subject in this case, and the ground or background simply, it doesn't work. It's like the head is suspended in the air, hence the comparisons with Viggo. Just compare, I did the two versions in which I separated Charles from background and changing the background hue. In one, it's purple, a color usually associated with royalty, and the other is a blend of greens and browns, which is more in sync with the subject's love of nature. The problem is that Charles still looks like a Carrie remake. But it's not only the lack of contrast, but the fact that it is red. A pinkish red. And don't get me wrong, the palette used is amazing. There are blood reds, there are purplish pinks, and shades of orange here and there. But does it work for a portrait? One unexpected silver lining is that if just a stop oil attacks this painting, nobody would notice. But you see, the idea of a portrait is that you should portray or showcase the person's personality and character. And for that, you use body language, lighting, contrast, the format itself, because the painting should represent the person. In this case, this color palette does not represent the subject's personality and character. And it's not because of the red, because here he is wearing this exact same uniform. Yes, this is a photography, but the visual elements are treated exactly the same. You don't see a pinkish red background, you see a gray background, so the figure or subject pops out of the frame, and the body language, both the pose and the facial expression, is extremely laid back and confident. This is drowning the subject in red. And one thing that red has is that it is intimately related to some of our strongest emotions, namely rage. It's not for nothing that we say he's seeing red, and red is the color of blood, of fire, of war. Again, there are many hues of reddish tones here, but the first impression that you have is that it is red. And that first impression is important. But take a look at this. Some say that Charles' Red Bath painting has to do with his vitality and character. Okay, let's assume for a moment that is the justification behind this. Then why the same artist represented Camilla as gray? Is that Camilla's character is gray? Because what Camilla projects here is anything but vitality. Or the same artist painting a portrait of Prince Philip. I'm sure that King Charles thought that his portrait was going to be more or less like this, because as you can see in the video reveal, wrong bloody reveal scene. As you can see, when he unveils the painting, he is visibly taken aback, as in this is not what he was expecting at all. He tried his best to keep his cool, but you can imagine him thinking, what in the name of the Lord is this? Well, he took it like a champ, I must say. That must have been the same reaction of Winston Churchill with that monstrosity of a portrait. Flat, with an uninteresting body language. He looks like he's been waiting 2 hours for his dentist appointment. But I can hear you saying, why do I care so much about a painting? After all, art is subjective. It depends on anyone's tastes. And no, that's just wrong. And this is a part that has to do with manipulation and gaslighting. Let's say that we have two works of art side by side. Number 7 by Rothko and Las Meninas from Velázquez. One thing is for certain. Anything can be art, but art can be objectively good or bad. As in bad in itself, not because of subjective opinions. In other words, even if it was sitting in the middle of a forest and nobody put their eyes on it, it would still be bad. One of these pieces of art is objectively good and the other is an absurd, bad joke. You think this discussion depends on what you or others like or not? That's one thing. Your subjective opinion, and you're entitled to it. If you try to argue that it depends on the artist's vision and intention, you are right to. Some artists want to make their art groundbreaking and provocative for all the wrong reasons. It doesn't mean it is objectively good. I can also hear some of you say, but the artist's intention of making you look and grab your attention about something that represents the absurdity of life was achieved. Yes, and he did it with a heinous or absurd artwork that is objectively bad art. The "you don't appreciate modern art because you're ignorant" mob is pure gaslighting. Don't get me wrong, and I have said this many times, I love modern art as well, but not precisely because I consider it good. I appreciate modern art because it is disruptive, not because it is any good. Most modern art is objectively and laughably bad, if not plain trash. And if you think both of these two pieces of art are good or good on their own right, or any similar argument, you have drank the Kool-Aid of the modern art mob. You're denying what's in front of your own eyes. You're denying what common sense is screaming in your ear. In other words, you're ready to believe in anything that the mob decides that you should believe. Even if your own eyes are telling you otherwise. You very well know how dangerous this is. But people fear that if they don't consider the painting on the left amazing art, then they will be labeled as ignorance. This is no different than the emperor's new clothes. Art is something that should lift us from the mundane and the prosaic, even if the mundane and the prosaic have been the theme of a lot of amazing and beautiful art over the centuries. Art should be beautiful and inspiring. And if you find the painting on the left beautiful and inspiring, I've got a bridge to sell you. What I find amusing is that people allow this gaslighting with paintings and sculptures, but not with other types of art. Because if you think both of these paintings are good, you will say that there's no distinction between Bach and Bad Bunny, or between Uwe Boll and Quentin Tarantino. And yes, there will be people who will say, there's no distinction between any of those examples. I've met people like that. They are entitled to their opinion, but the fact is that they don't really have one. They find any art of any kind the same. I have one final question to whoever still thinks that King Charles' portrait is amazing. What would be your opinion if we had the exact same painting and the subject was someone else? That will be interesting to find out. But still, I would love to know what you think about this in the comments. Don't forget to download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy. And remember, much love and bliss.